Section 1. Hey guys, tonight we're stepping quietly into moon-drenched marble, reed-sweet air, and the rustle of silk against sandalwood. The Nile glides below us like a ribbon of molten night. Somewhere, incense burns. Somewhere, armies march. But you? You're drifting into the most powerful woman in the ancient world, and you probably won't survive her dinner party. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and feel free to post your local time and where you're listening from. I love seeing how far we drift together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are 13. And your father's dead. You are Cleopatra? Yes, that Cleopatra, and the air in Alexandria tastes different now. There's too much salt, too many whispers, too many men in sandals who think you're a child, but you are not. Not really. Not anymore. The palace smells like myrrh and sea rot. The council chambers echo with foreign accents, Greek, Latin, something rougher that the guards won't name. You wear your sandals tightly strapped. You keep your head high. You bow only when it serves you. No one says you're queen. Not yet. They say daughter of the king. They say princess. They say clever little thing. You smile, because you know that you've known for years, since the day your father left in a boat full of debts and prophecies. Since the night you heard your mother's voice crack behind a closed door. Since the morning you saw your tutor's scrolls, annotated in your father's hand, with a note. Let her learn everything. So you did. You learned how to read and when to pretend you couldn't. You learned when to flatter and when to feign sleep. You learned that girls who listen live longer. And now you listen harder than ever. You learn what they fear. You learn what they expect. And then you learn how to turn that into power, because the world will not hand it to you. You will take it, quietly, steadily, like tide against stone. Section 2. You spend your mornings reading tax codes and your nights pretending you aren't afraid. Your tutors quiz you in 9 languages. Your brothers throw figs at each other across the marble halls. You sit perfectly still. You are always watching. Your father called you his clever one. Not his favorite. That was too dangerous a title. But clever enough to earn nods from the Greek philosophers and weary smiles from the priests. When you were younger, he let you sit beside him on the throne. Not for ceremony. Those bored you. But when the real decisions happened. Land disputes. Naval repairs. Bribes that needed balancing. You didn't speak. You watched. And that was the game. Your father's game. Learning when to be silent. When to charm. When to disappear just long enough to be missed that you're learning still. After his death, the palace shifts. The walls lean closer. The floors creak under the weight of ambition. Your brothers are technically co-rulers now. One is small and sullen. The other is smug and sloppy. Both are threats. You don't sleep much, but you do smile more. You learn to speak to people with pauses, not paragraphs. You learn to nod just enough. You ask questions you already know the answers to. And wait. You walk the gardens at dawn. Count the guards. Track the servants. Map the palace in your mind like a general preparing for siege. You read gods. You read everything. Greek tragedies. Egyptian hymnals. Roman records of war. You study the logistics of grain shipments, the measurements of Nile floods, the rates of inflation from decade to decade. You take it all in like breath, because knowledge is armor, and armor is the only thing they can't strip from you. One night, you find your father's old sandals tucked behind a column in the throne room. Too big. Worn at the heels, you put them on anyway. They fit better than expected. Section 3. You wake up before sunrise these days. The palace is quieter in the blue hours, before the courtiers rise and the first sandals begin to click down the corridors. You like it this way. The stone is cool beneath your bare feet. The gardens haven't yet been flooded with incense. The Nile glows like a sleeping god, still and massive. You're 20 now, give or take, and Egypt is yours again. But ruling is less about ceremony than it is about keeping 10 plates spinning while pretending you're holding none. Your mornings begin with scrolls, trade reports, Weather readings. A shipment of cedar from Lebanon has been delayed again. Some village upriver is laid on taxes, citing crocodile interference again. You skim through the details like a gambler reading cards, trying to see the patterns in the grain. The priests come next. Always politely. Always firmly. They want more grain for the temple of Isis. You nod. You ask which priests actually perform rituals and which just collect bribes. The old high priest wheezes. You smile. After them come the scribes, the engineers, the astronomers. You're rebuilding bits of Alexandria that were damaged during the war, the library, the docks, the old causeway. You like to walk the scaffolding barefoot, shocking the workers but also charming them. A queen who shows up at a construction site is either very clever or very bored. You are not bored. And yet, the air is strange. Because Julius Caesar has left. He returned to Rome after your rule was secured, his business in Egypt concluded, though he left more than a few things behind, like Caesarion, and a growing collection of marble busts of your face. Your relationship with him is now half legend, half tabloid. The Roman Senate gossips. Some are outraged, others jealous. A few are probably both. You send letters to him carefully phrased, elaborately inked. You never begin them with Dear Gaius. That's too familiar. Nor with My General. That's too submissive. Instead, you find ways to say everything and nothing all at once. He writes back less often. And then, word arrives. Caesar has declared himself dictator for life. That goes over about as well as rotten wine. Back in Alexandria, you sense the unease. Not among your people. They're busy with harvests and taxes and the usual business of staying alive, but among your court. Your advisors don't like that you still refer to him with admiration. Rome is not stable, one of them warns. And Caesar is not invincible. You nod. You already know. You receive news from Rome the way people receive weather reports, through rumor, poetry, and couriers who smell like horse sweat and panic. Every scroll is a possible earthquake. And one day it comes. Julius Caesar is dead, stabbed in the Senate, brutally, repeatedly, by people he once called friends. You read the message 3 times before setting it down. There is no royal reaction, no public sobbing. You go to the temple of Isis and spend hours in silence. Outside, the people still sing. They don't yet understand what this means. But you do. Without Caesar, your son's status crumbles like a baked brick. Without Caesar, your protection in Rome vanishes. Without Caesar, you are suddenly very alone on a very large political chessboard. Still, you do not retreat. You move. First, you solidify your son's place. You begin referring to him publicly as King of Kings. You have coins minted with his image. You hold processions where he wears tiny gold armor and waves like someone who understands diplomacy but not fractions. It's adorable and calculated. Next, you reinforce Egypt's borders. You build relationships with neighboring kingdoms, renegotiate trade deals, and quietly pay off potential rebels. You bribe some Roman officials, threaten others, and pretend you're not watching the chaos unfold across the Mediterranean. Because chaos it is. Rome is splitting. In the vacuum of Caesar's death, 2 major figures rise, Mark Antony, Caesar's old ally and battle-hardened showman, and Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir, young, pale, strategic, and ambitious in a quiet, terrifying way. For now, they're on the same side. But no one thinks that will last. And you? You wait. You throw banquets. Host poetry readings. Continue temple renovations. You study maps at night. You listen to your advisors argue. You kiss your son on the forehead and ask him what he dreams about. Then, a letter arrives. From Mark Antony. It's polite, formal, inviting. He's in Tarsus in the east. He wants to meet. There's talk of an alliance. Rome's eastern provinces need grain, gold, ships. Egypt has all 3. But the letter isn't just political. It's playful. You see the challenge woven into the ink. He wants to know who you are, now that Caesar is gone. He wants to see if the stories were true. If you're still Cleopatra, the woman who once had herself smuggled into a general's bedroom rolled in a rug. You smile. and begin planning your entrance. This is not a negotiation. This is theater. You commission a barge. Not just any barge, a floating palace. Gold-encrusted sails. Purple drapes. Oars manned by rhythmic, scented rowers. You wear silver, or maybe seafoam green. The sources disagree. But they all agree. You look like a goddess. You float down the river into Tarsus like Aphrodite herself, with music playing and doves released at regular intervals. Fish leap beside the boat. The townspeople cheer. Mark Antony, standing at the harbor in full armor, probably drops his goblet. You don't rush to greet him. You make him wait. That evening, when you finally meet, he laughs. You laugh. And the world changes. Not instantly. Not with kisses or crowns. But with shared stories, long talks, and the quiet understanding between two survivors of politics. Mark Antony is not Caesar. He's Messier, funnier, warmer. Less calculating, more dramatic. But he's powerful. And in this world, that matters. You begin to spend more time together. First, as allies. Then, as something more. The Roman poets will later call it scandalous, exotic, dangerous. But in these early days, it's two people both haunted by war, both fluent in charm, finding that they are, and probably, equals. Section 4. You've always known how to read a room, but now, with Mark Antony at your side, you're learning how to read a whole continent. The dinners you host together are legendary. Long cushions, low tables, fig wine, roast quail stuffed with cinnamon and fish paste, not always a hit, that one. The air smells like jasmine and grilled goat. Philosophers, generals, dancers, and spies lounge beneath painted ceilings, pretending they're not eavesdropping on one another. At the head of the table, you recline next to Mark Antony. He makes jokes with his mouth full. You correct his Greek. He pretends to be offended, then declares you're the only woman who's ever scared him. The courtiers laugh on cue, but beneath the laughter, politics hums like a gnat. Rome is fraying. You feel it in every scroll that arrives with news of Octavian, young, icy Octavian, who has now begun branding himself Augustus. He's consolidating power, aligning with the Senate, absorbing enemies like a sponge. Quietly, efficiently, mercilessly. You and Antony have children together now. Twins, a boy and a girl. You name them Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene, the sun and the moon. People coo at them in the marketplace. The priests interpret omens from their birth dates. You commission tiny golden thrones, half as a joke, but Octavian is not laughing. He begins a whisper campaign in Rome. Paints you as a foreign seductress. Says Antony is bewitched. That he's given away Roman land, Roman troops, Roman dignity. The idea of Rome ruled from Alexandria by a queen who speaks 6 languages and worships cats terrifies them. And so, you counter. You begin appearing in public dressed as Isis, your children as divine offspring. You lean into the spectacle. You and Antony host ceremonies where gifts rain down like petals from the temple ceiling. You send grain to starving provinces, bribes to uneasy allies, honeyed letters to Roman governors who might be swayed. You know how this works. You know Rome doesn't fear power. It fears power wrapped in perfume. Still, the gossip spreads. Antony is not Roman anymore, they say. He eats figs soaked in wine and calls it breakfast, they say. He kneels before her throne, they whisper. And maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. But you're not correcting the record, because sometimes myth is more useful than truth. The real tension begins with the donations of Alexandria. You and Antony step onto a dais before the Alexandrian crowd and declare your children rulers of various eastern territories. Caesarion, your son with Julius Caesar, is named King of Kings. The twins are given Armenia, Media, Cyrenaica, places still contested, still symbolic. To Egypt. This is glorious. To Rome. It's a declaration of war. Octavian, who now styles himself the son of a god, is livid. He claims Antony has gone native, that he's abandoned his Roman wife, Octavia, Octavian's own sister, and raised a bastard dynasty in the east. He reads Antony's private letters aloud in the Senate. He waves your will in the forum, real or forged, claiming you and Antony plan to be buried in Alexandria, not Rome. The Senate gasps. That's all it takes. Rome votes for war, not against Antony, against you. You don't flinch. You begin preparing the navy. You meet with generals, inspect shipyards, calculate the silver you'll need for grain reserves and soldier bonuses. You wear armor under your robes now. Not often, but sometimes it helps. Antony drinks more these days. He's still brilliant, still magnetic, but there's a slouch in his smile. You notice. You don't mention it. You still love him. But war is war. And Octavian is coming. He's crossing with legions, with propaganda, with a single-minded hunger for control that cannot be flattered or bribed. You know what's coming. You've seen it before in others, Ptolemies with too much ambition and not enough restraint. You've read about it in scrolls. You've ruled beside it. The storm is forming. You have your ships, your allies, your children, your city. You light incense every evening at the temple, and you wait. Section 5. You're on the deck of a warship now. It's larger than most, lacquered wood gleaming under the Mediterranean sun, its sails stiff with crimson dye. Around you, the sea shimmers like molten glass. Behind you lies Alexandria, safe for now. Ahead lies Actium. You try not to think about the omen from this morning, a sailor who cut his hand on a bronze fixture and bled all over the prow. It was cleaned quickly, but the color lingers in your mind. Mark Antony stands beside you, wrapped in bronze-scaled armor, his hair too carefully curled. He's cracking a joke about the winds, but his eyes flick toward the horizon more often than usual. The sea is full of ships, your ships, his ships. Dozens of them, oars dipping in near-perfect rhythm. You've trained for this, paid for it, bled for it. But Octavian's fleet is larger. You both know it. Still, you press forward. Underscore 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 underscore. The Battle of Actium does not go as planned. Even historians can't quite agree on why. Some say treachery. Others, miscommunication. A few claim the winds changed, as if Poseidon himself had picked a side. You suspect it was many things: indecision, fatigue, egos, and maybe a bit of divine spite. From your command vessel, you watch the formations break. Roman ships, once supposedly loyal to Antony, begin retreating. A few defect outright. Your navy tries to adjust, but too late. Octavian's admiral, Agrippa, young, clever, infuriatingly competent, presses in with brutal precision. Smoke chokes the sky. Flaming arrows streak like angry stars. You grip the railing, your knuckles white against the grain. And then it happens. Antony's ship veers toward you, signaling retreat. It isn't cowardice, it's calculation. If you both stay, you die. If one escapes, there's still a game left to play. Your ship turns, its oars slicing like knives. Some shout betrayal. Some call it strategy. You don't speak. You're watching the battle shrink behind you, a tangle of sails, smoke, and splinters. A floating world collapsing. You sail south, fast. Back in Egypt, the air is different, heavy. Word travels faster than ships now. By the time you reach Alexandria, rumors have already bloomed. She fled. He abandoned his men. They've lost everything. You don't argue. You don't correct. You build. You replenish the treasury, quietly melting down some of your own jewelry. You have grain stored for years. You upgrade the city's defenses, commission new watchtowers, inspect the harbor walls personally. You still hold Egypt. That matters. Antony returns a week later. Bruised, silent, thinner than you remember. The reunion is not romantic. It's familiar. You sit beside each other in a long stone corridor, sharing figs in silence. A lizard scuttles past. You don't cry. Neither does he. What's left between you now is loyalty and a kind of tired devotion that neither of you bother to dress up anymore. That night, you walk the palace gardens alone. You pause beneath a myrrh tree, tracing its bark with your fingers. The scent lingers on your hands. The stars above Alexandria are sharp and indifferent. You look toward the sea and wait for Rome to arrive. It doesn't take long. Octavian marches south, gathering forces like sand in a tide. Every province he passes, he claims. Governors bend. Allies reconsider. One night, you get word that a Roman detachment has crossed into Egyptian territory. The final act has begun. Alexandria prepares for siege. Your generals brace themselves. Your people, gods bless them, keep baking bread, repairing boats, living their lives as if empires do not end. One morning, you wake to find a scroll beside your bed. A Roman standard is visible on the horizon. Octavian's troops have reached the outer districts. Antony tries one last stand. He rallies the remaining legions. He dons his armor. He rides through the city with banners flying. But it's too late. Morale is low. Supplies are lower. You both know this isn't a defense, it's a goodbye. On the second day of fighting, a false report reaches Antony. Cleopatra is dead. He believes it instantly. And with the desperation of a man who has loved, lost, and lost again. He falls on his own sword. He misses. They bring him to you. The room is too bright. Someone has opened the shutters, and the Nile light pours in like a flood. Antony lies on a couch, his blood soaking into the embroidered cushions. He's pale, half-conscious, muttering in Greek. You kneel beside him. He smiles, barely, whispers your name. And for a moment, it's just the two of you again, under a painted ceiling, making promises you never quite meant to keep. Then he's gone. The silence that follows is thick, aching, final. You close his eyes and begin planning your own end. Section 6. You don't plan to die immediately. That's not how a queen ends. First, you meet with Octavian. It's strange. For years, he's been a specter, whispers on the wind, signatures on scrolls, a pale boy turned pale conqueror. Now he's here, in your palace, sitting calmly in a marble hall that smells faintly of lemon oil and conquest. He is not what you expect. You thought he might rage, accuse, threaten. Instead, he's calm, civil. He greets you with Roman formality, bows lower than you expect, and compliments the mosaic floor. He looks at you not like a lover or an enemy, but like a banker evaluating a promising ruin. You offer him wine. He declines. You offer him treasure. He smiles. What he wants is Caesar Ion. You say your son is safe, elsewhere. You don't add that he's likely already dead, intercepted while trying to flee. You don't ask for confirmation. Neither of you does. The silence between you is heavy with things not spoken. Octavian does not raise his voice. He doesn't have to. He informs you, softly, as if quoting a weather forecast, that you will be taken to Rome. Displayed, paraded, dragged behind his triumphal chariot through the streets like a captured beast from the eastern wilderness. You nod, you smile, and you tell him you understand. That night, you do not sleep. You walk the palace corridors barefoot, as you used to when you were younger. When Caesar was still alive and Alexandria still felt like the center of the world. You pass the painted columns, the lotus-shaped sconces, the tiled fountain where your children used to splash. You remember them all, each hallway like a chapter, each room a verse. In the treasury, you run your fingers over the gold, your gold, that Octavian will soon claim. It's no longer yours, not really. Nothing is, except this choice. The story ends in a small chamber, not a grand one, not a throne room, just a quiet space you've had prepared. The air is thick with myrrh and hush. You wear your finest robe, white linen edged in lapis and gold. Around your neck, the broad collar of your dynasty. In your ears, pearls. The snake is brought in a basket. You're not even sure it's the ASP. There are many versions of the story. Some say you used a poison pin. Others say it was a draft. The snake is the romantic version, the theatrical one. You've always liked theater. Before you go, you write a final letter to Octavian. You thank him for his courtesy. You ask to be buried with Antony. You leave no threats, no riddles, just grace. Then you lie down on the couch, cool silk against your skin. You hold the basket in your lap. And for a moment, you imagine the Nile outside, wide and slow and ancient. You imagine the boats, the fish, the children laughing in the markets. You imagine Alexandria, your city, still alive without you. You take one breath, then another, and then nothing. Later, Octavian finds your body. He tries to feign anger, but there's something else in his eyes. Regret, perhaps, or admiration, or the quiet realization that the last rival worth fearing is gone. He honors your request. You are buried beside Antony, in a tomb whose walls whisper the last flickers of the Ptolemaic line. Rome celebrates. The poets write odes about your beauty, your cunning, your downfall. They get most of it wrong, but you expected that, because history never remembers queens the way they were, only the way men needed them to be. Section 7. You are no longer here, but your shadow is. It lingers in Alexandria, in the marble of the palace walls, in the breath of the sphinxes guarding the causeway, in the memory of every child who peers out over the sea and wonders what it means to rule. They whisper your name in the marketplaces, even now. Cleopatra, the glory and the ghost. Octavian is now Augustus. He sails back to Rome with the weight of Egypt in his hands, its grain, its treasure, its silence. He has what he came for. His triumph is magnificent. They parade golden statues of you, eyes rimmed in black coal, arms outstretched like wings. The crowd cheers. They think they've seen your ending, but Alexandria remembers differently. The tomb you share with Antony becomes legend. People say it was lined with gold, with scrolls from the great library tucked beside your body, with a single mirror at the head so your spirit could keep watch. Others say Augustus sealed it forever, that the entrance was lost on purpose, that it lies beneath the waves now, beneath centuries of dust and collapse. Divers search for it even today. They have not found you. Your children survive. Not all. Caesar Ion, your firstborn, the son of Caesar, is executed shortly after your death. Octavian considers him a threat, a rival heir. The boy is 15. You never had a chance to say goodbye, but your twins live. Cleopatra, Selene, and Alexander Helios are taken to Rome, marched in chains during Augustus' triumph. The crowd stares. They've never seen children like this, dressed in Eastern silks, gold circlets on their brows, wide-eyed and exhausted. It's not a celebration. It's a warning. They're handed over to Octavia, Octavian's sister, Antony's Roman wife. She raises them in her household like her own, feeding them figs and Latin and the careful discipline of survival. Helios fades from history. Selene endures. Selene marries a North African king, Juba of Mauritania. He's Roman educated, like her. Smart, loyal, a little dull, but kind. Together they build a kingdom in the West, where Roman roads meet Berber traditions and Greek philosophy. She becomes queen, not like you, perhaps, but a queen nonetheless. She names her son Ptolemy. And still, your story grows. Centuries pass. The Romans fade. Byzantium rises, then falls. Arabs arrive, then Ottomans, then the French, then the British. And still, your face appears, carved into coins, painted on pottery, reimagined by poets, sculptors, actresses. They argue over your nose, your skin, your accent. They forget your taxes, your reforms, your fluency in 9 languages. They remember the drama, the eyeliner, the men. Historians still debate you. Was she manipulative? Brilliant? Cruel? Feminist? They write papers, stage plays, make movies. None of them know the sound of your voice when you whispered to your son, or the smell of the myrrh-soaked halls, or the way the sea glowed just before you stepped into your barge. But Alexandria remembers, even now, when tourists walk the harbor. Some say they feel you. I in the wind, I in the light, I in the hush between waves. Because you were never just a queen. You were a country in a single body. And long after the empire ended, the story didn't. Section 8. You begin again, as all legends do. Retold. It starts with the scribes, then the poets, then the conquerors who want to trace their blood back to you. They write your name into scrolls, half worshipful, half warning. Cleopatra the enchantress, Cleopatra the sorceress, Cleopatra the queen who loved too much, None of it is quite true. But truth has always been optional for royalty. In Rome, your memory becomes a cautionary tale. They teach young noblewomen your name alongside words like ambition, ruin, and foreign corruption. They make you a symbol of why Rome must stay Roman. You are what happens, they say, when a woman reaches too far. But that's not how the people of Alexandria speak of you. For them, your reign is not a scandal. It is a high tide. Old merchants speak of the days when the city glittered with coin and music, when foreign languages swirled like spices in the air, when their children walked safely along the causeway to the lighthouse. They remember how you would pause to speak to them, in Greek, in Egyptian, even in Latin, when needed. You were complicated. They remember that, too. You raised taxes. You demanded loyalty. You could be ruthless, decisive in ways that frightened your court. You exiled rivals, interrogated informants, dismissed priests who disappointed you. But you also funded orphans. You built granaries. You kept the Nile trade routes clean. You ruled. That part matters. In the centuries after your death, your image fractures. To the early Christians, you are a pagan queen, wrapped in pearls and sin. To Islamic historians, you are a philosopher queen, a curious mind who debated scholars and studied alchemy. To Renaissance painters, you become a pale temptress reclining among velvet drapes, an excuse to paint serpents and expose thighs. In every era, you are remade. None of them see you clearly. And yet, you survive. Centuries pass. The sands shift. The lighthouse collapses in an earthquake. The great library burns, perhaps many times, perhaps once. Scholars mourn. Egypt changes hands again and again. But Cleopatra never quite fades. A German historian writes of your coins, your hooked nose, your square chin. A French general declares your name before looting Alexandria. A British explorer claims to have found your bath. He hadn't. You are reimagined in opera, in marble, in Technicolor. They put your face on perfume bottles and postage stamps. They argue over your race, your motives, your final thoughts. You become a mirror for each generation, reflecting their fears, their fascinations, their need for stories with queens who are beautiful, tragic, and just a bit dangerous. You become myth, not because you lied, but because the truth was never enough. And still, the search continues. They've been looking for your tomb for years now. In Taposiris Magna, near the sea, teams of archaeologists dig and catalog, sifting sand for slivers of marble and inscriptions that might whisper your name. They hold up amulets to the light. They peer into chambers half filled with water. They swear they're close. No one has found you yet, but they still come, not just the researchers, the dreamers. The ones who read about you in childhood and never forgot the queen who rolled herself in a rug, who sailed into a war with perfume on the breeze, who refused to walk behind a Roman's chariot. They come to see if you are real, and if they listen closely. Some say they hear you, not in the stones. In the questions. Who gets to tell the story, and who gets to finish it? Section 9. You left no diary, no scrolls in your own hand. No tender last confession tucked beneath your pillow. All that remains of your voice is secondhand, filtered through enemies, poets, gossiping senators, and later, scholars with agendas of their own, which is why your silence is so loud. People fill it with what they want. Some say you loved too fiercely. Others say you ruled too coldly. But no one seems to say the simplest thing. You did what you could. In a world that never expected a woman to survive this long at the top, even fewer say this. You were tired. You were born into a crumbling dynasty by the time you could walk. Your family's throne was a relic, a jeweled chair balanced on decades of debt, Roman interference, and cousins who kept mysteriously drowning in bathtubs. You didn't inherit an empire. You inherited a mess, but you made it magnificent. You learned. You listened. You made allies out of enemies and symbols out of banquets. You held together a kingdom with charisma and coins and a carefully cultivated sense of mystery. They said you were seductive. What they meant was persuasive, brilliant, magnetic. They called you dangerous. What they meant was powerful. They claimed you worshipped Isis to manipulate your image. What they meant was, you understood branding 1,000 years before the term existed. You read philosophy by oil lamp while your generals quarreled. You debated astronomers between performances of new poetry. You walked barefoot on construction scaffolding and corrected the engineers on column placement. You were present, and in that presence, you made yourself unforgettable. Rome will never forgive you for that. To them, queens are meant to fall. They can rise, briefly, but only to make their descent more dramatic. You ruined that arc. You stayed in power too long. You made them work for their conquest. You held your own against men the world had already labeled invincible. They rewrote you. They gave you fangs, hips, eyeliner, and tragedy. They softened your victories into affairs, flattened your mind into myth. Even Octavian, now Augustus, couldn't erase you. He tried. He minted coins that boasted your defeat. He built temples to Rome's triumph over the East. But in doing so, he preserved you. Every image of his victory carried your shape in its shadow. They will keep looking for your tomb, and maybe one day, someone will find it. Beneath sand and time, beneath layers of collapsed belief and sunlit fantasy. Maybe they'll open a sealed room and find two bodies, carefully arranged, one in Roman armor, the other in a shroud of linen and gold. Maybe the walls will be painted with lotus flowers and flood myths and royal names. Maybe they'll say, she didn't vanish. She chose. And in that quiet chamber, history will have to pause and re-listen, because your story was never about falling. It was about staying upright for as long as the world would let you. Section 10. It's quiet now. You've slipped from the world of war elephants and Roman couriers, of palace hallways echoing with scandal and strategy. The years roll forward, like river stones, smoothing the sharp edges of your life until all that remains is the shine. But even in stillness, your name moves. It stirs in unexpected places. In a university library in France, a dusty scholar pauses over a footnote. A single line in a neglected Greek manuscript mentions the queen who debated philosophers and drank rosewater through a pearl. The scholar smiles, leans closer, and writes your name in the margins. In a Cairo classroom, a girl draws your face in her notebook, almond eyes, a crown with twin cobras. She writes, beneath it, Queen. Her teacher tells her Cleopatra was not Arab, not Egyptian. She shrugs. She was here. That's enough. In a Brooklyn museum gift shop, a boy picks up a comic book. On the cover, you, stylized, dramatic, eyes like daggers. He flips through the pages, captivated. His sister leans over. Is she a superhero? He nods. Somehow, you are. The 20th century remakes you again, this time in film. Cleopatra becomes a studio epic, technicolor veils, cold-drenched stairs, men dueling over your affections while you lounge on improbably plush couches. The actresses change, but the outline stays the same. Seductress, tragic beauty, doomed queen. You become a fantasy, and then slowly, a reclamation. Black historians remind the world that Egypt is in Africa. Feminist writers revisit your strategies, your speeches, your statecraft. They ask, what if she wasn't a femme fatale? What if she was just competent? A few even dare to call you a genius. It's a quiet revolution. But you would have recognized it. The reshaping of narrative. Meanwhile, Alexandria endures. The modern city is louder, more chaotic, less scented with incense than in your day. But the bones are there. The harbor still curves like a beckoning hand. The breeze still tastes faintly of salt and jasmine. Tourists walk through the Greco-Roman Museum, staring at busts that might be yours. Might not. The guides hedge. The truth is, no one knows exactly what you looked like. Coins suggest sharp features. Statues suggest softness. Writers disagree entirely. And yet, when people look at those statues, they swear it's you. Recognition is not about accuracy. It's about presence, and yours lingers. You are not the last queen, but you are the one they remember, not because you died famously, not because of Rome, not even because of Caesar, because you made power beautiful. You turned a fragile, indebted kingdom into a stage. You ruled through droughts, rebellions, invasions, betrayals. And still made time for theater, for scholarship, for dinner parties where mathematicians debated moonlight. You balanced it all until it broke. And when it did, you broke on your own terms. That is why they remember. That is why they search for your tomb. Not just with shovels, but with stories. That is why your name still matters. Because you were not just a queen of Egypt. You were a queen of attention. And in that, you remain undefeated. Section 11. Let's rewind. Back before the barge, before Caesar, before even the crown, when your name was still just Cleopatra Philopator, daughter of a faltering king, sister to 3 siblings who would all, in one way or another, become your enemies. You were 10. The palace is huge and full of voices you don't yet know how to trust. Your father, Ptolemy 12, has a voice like oil, slippery, sweet, always slipping through a crowd. He plays the flute. He owes Rome everything. He teaches you something vital. Charm keeps heads attached, but you learn something else, too. Charm is not the same as respect. The first time you step into the great library, you nearly stop breathing. The air is dry, crackling with parchment and dust. The ceilings are impossibly high. Light filters down through lattice stone, painting stripes of gold across the marble floor. You trail your fingers along the spines of scrolls, whispering titles to yourself. Your tutors are skeptical at first. Girls your age are supposed to learn how to gesture politely with a fan, how to keep a husband interested without looking interested. But you're more interested in maps, in verbs with 9 tenses, in why the Nile floods when it does, and what causes eclipses. You learn Greek, Egyptian, Latin, then Aramaic. Then something older. A visiting astronomer tells your father you have a brain like a sponge. He laughs. But you remember that. You keep studying. Then comes exile. You're a teenager when your father is overthrown. The court fractures. The mob burns statues. Someone hurls a dead ibis at the palace gates. You and your siblings are whisked away like inconvenient jewelry, carted off into the hot shadows of Roman favor. It's not glamorous. The food is stale. The housing borrowed. The whispers endless. But this is where you learn how power really works. Rome isn't beautiful. It's loud. Cracked streets, public debates shouted in the forum, beggars and philosophers all drinking from the same fountains. But it's organized and ruthless. You study the senators, their wives, their language. You sit quietly in the back of the room while ambassadors plead for grain, for troops, for mercy. You watch who gets listened to, who gets ignored, who walks out alive. And when your father begs for support to reclaim his throne, you don't just observe. You assist, quietly, cleverly, memorizing what every favor costs. By the time you return to Alexandria, you're still technically a girl, but you've already outgrown the role. Then your father dies. The crown passes to you and your younger brother, Ptolemy 13. A joint reign, as is tradition. But he's still a child, and his advisors do not like you. They call you arrogant, disobedient, unwomanly. You call them irrelevant. The court splits again. Scrolls are seized. Guards switch loyalties. You're forced to flee once more, this time dressed as a servant, melting into desert towns where no one knows the word dynasty, only taxes. You wander from camp to camp, rewriting your identity as you go. And then, opportunity. A Roman general arrives in Alexandria. His name is Julius Caesar. He's older than you. Scarred, curious, dangerous in a way that isn't immediately visible. You watch him tour the palace, flanked by men with iron accents and too many rings. You hear that he favors boldness. You do the thing they'll never forget. You roll yourself into a rug and change history. Right now, you are 15, in exile, hungry for more than food. You want your city back, your books, your name. You want the world to know that you were never just a daughter, or a consort, or a scandal waiting to happen. You want to rule, and somewhere deep in your chest, curled like a sleeping asp, is the part of you that knows you will. Section 12. The rug is heavier than you thought. You're curled up like a cat, limbs stiff, mouth pressed to coarse linen that smells faintly of cedar and palace dust. You try not to sneeze. The porter, one of your most trusted allies, grunts as he hauls you down the palace corridors. nodding to Roman guards and Egyptian attendants alike. Nobody stops him. Why would they? It's just a rug. Just another tribute to Caesar's new power. Until it isn't. The guards swing open the doors. The porter steps inside. He drops the rug at Caesar's feet and steps back. There is silence. Then a rustle. Then you, Cleopatra, unfurl like a scroll across the polished floor of your own palace. You rise slowly, deliberately, as if this is how royal audiences always begin. Your hair is pinned. Your robes shimmer. Your voice, when you speak, is low and melodic and completely unbothered by circumstance. General, you say, and smile. Later, Caesar will say he was impressed by your audacity, that no one had ever dared present themselves to him quite like that, that he admired your courage, your wit, your resourcefulness. He will leave out the part where he sat, momentarily stunned, while you stood before him in absolute control of a room that was not, technically, yours. It becomes the most famous entrance in ancient history, and it works. Caesar agrees to meet privately. You talk for hours, not about seduction, not at first, about politics, Rome's debts, Egypt's trade routes, your knowledge of grain markets and military loyalties. You show him that you're not a puppet queen in silk sandals. You're a strategist. You speak of your brother's advisors, their corruption, their Roman connections. You draw diagrams on a wax tablet. You know where they sleep, what they drink, who they owe. Caesar listens. He always listens. By the end of the night, he agrees to help you reclaim the throne. It is not love. It is alliance. And alliances, you know, are rarely clean. War follows, small at first, factional fighting inside Alexandria. But it escalates. Ptolemy Xii's forces besiege the palace where you and Caesar now reside. Streets flood with fire and oil. The harbor becomes a chessboard of ships. At one point, Caesar orders a desperate defense of the great library itself. Historians still argue whether that's when it burned. You don't have time to mourn. You are too busy surviving. Eventually, Caesar wins. Your brother drowns in the Nile, thrown from a retreating boat in the chaos. No one weeps loudly. You are restored to the throne, now officially co-ruling with a younger, even less threatening brother, Ptolemy 14, but everyone knows who holds the real power. You and Caesar. Beside you, he stays in Egypt longer than expected. You tour the countryside together, visit temples, speak with priests, eat grapes in gardens thick with oleander and songbirds. Caesar is curious, restless, brilliant. You are amused by his bluntness and intrigued by his vision. You learn from him, and you teach him. He watches you speak Egyptian to farmers, Aramaic to traders, Greek to scholars. He asks you questions no one else has dared to ask, about your childhood, your gods, your fears. One night, beneath stars so bright they feel close enough to touch, you tell him your dream. You want Egypt to be more than a memory. You want it to matter again, not just as a province, as a power. He listens, and you both imagine what that future might look like. When Caesar leaves, he promises to return. He sails back to Rome with scrolls of papyrus and stories of the queen who taught him to see the East with different eyes. You send messengers after him, letters, perfumes, tokens. You wait. When word comes that you are pregnant, you don't hesitate. You name the boy Caesarion and begin preparing a kingdom, just in case. Section 13. The boy is born in the season of the Nile's generosity. The river overflows that year, fat and smooth and shining under a sky so blue it looks painted. Farmers call it a good omen. Priests nod solemnly and chant blessings. Midwives whisper that the child's cries were strong, impatient, like a prince who already expects obedience. You hold him against your chest, damp and pink and squinting. He smells like milk and eternity. Caesarion, little Caesar. The name is a gamble, a prayer wrapped in a declaration. You don't ask Caesar's permission. You simply write to him, "Our son is healthy. His name is Caesarion." I trust Rome will honor him accordingly that he does not object. Not in writing. Anyway, the people of Egypt rejoice. They parade tiny statues. They bake bread shaped like lions. You appear before the public wrapped in gold-threaded linen, Caesarion swaddled in silk, his head crowned with a diadem far too large. You walk the causeway like a goddess carrying proof. The message is clear. Egypt has a future. Rome has an heir. And you, Cleopatra, have secured both. But not everyone is pleased that I end Rome. Caesar's recognition of Caesarion is murky. He never formally names the boy his heir. That title, legally and politically, goes to Octavian, his great-nephew. But he also doesn't deny Caesarion's existence. He allows gossip to grow like ivy along the walls of the Senate. This unsettles the senators. They see a child born of a foreign queen. A queen who worships strange gods, who holds feasts where poets debate priests, who rolls herself into rugs and calls herself Isis. They see Egypt's influence sliding into Caesar's heart, and they do not like it. And so, the knives begin to whisper. Back in Alexandria, you expand your court. Scholars, diplomats, artists, engineers. You're not just ruling, you're building. Caesarion's nursery is next to the library wing. He grows up with scrolls and lullabies, with Greek lessons and the scent of lotus blossoms drifting through carved windows. You start drafting laws in his name. Coins are minted bearing both your profiles, mother and son, queen and king. The imagery is precise, deliberate. You are training your people to accept a future where a woman rules alongside her bloodline. Your advisors warn you to be careful, but you've never found caution to be particularly useful. Then the news arrives. Julius Caesar has been assassinated. The message is short, hastily written, with tear-blurred ink. The courier barely sleeps. You read it once, then again, then a third time, in silence. They stabbed him to in the Senate. On the Ides of March, by men who had once sworn loyalty. There is no funeral for you to attend. No body sent across the sea. Just silence and the smell of rain rising from the palace stones as a storm approaches the city. You walk to the nursery. Caesarion is asleep. You touch his cheek and whisper, everything changes now. And it does. Rome spirals. Alliances fracture. Octavian steps forward, young and pale and sharper than his age should allow. Mark Antony rises too. Older, louder, more beloved by the soldiers. For a brief, uneasy moment, they ally. But everyone can see the coming storm. Back in Egypt, you play your own game. You double the grain reserves. Strengthen the navy. Begin sending ships with humanitarian aid to provinces Rome has neglected. You meet with spies disguised as translators. You exchange coded letters with both sides of the Roman divide. And you wait. Your throne is stable, but the world is tilting. You learn to balance with grace. One day, a new letter arrives. Not from a spy, not from a senator, from Mark Antony. The handwriting is familiar, slightly messy, occasionally too large for the parchment. The letter is polite, formal. But there's a current beneath it. He wants to meet. He's in Tarsus, gathering strength in the east. He needs grain, ships, money. You have all three. But what he really wants to know is this. Are you still Cleopatra? You smile. Not because you're flattered, but because the game has begun again, and you never lost your taste for it. Section 14. The wind is perfect. Your barge cuts through the Cydnus River like a dream wearing jewelry. Everything about it is intentional, each tassel on the sail, each flicker of incense trailing behind your oarsmen, each dove released at precise intervals so they appear to bless your arrival from the clouds. You are not subtle. You are not trying to be. This isn't diplomacy. This is stagecraft, and Mark Antony is your audience. Tarsus is a city caught between grit and grandeur. Its streets are dusty, its citizens curious, its generals suspicious of your spectacle. But they watch open-mouthed as you drift into their harbor like a goddess late to her own ceremony. You do not disembark immediately. Of course not. You wait on the deck, framed in silk and sunlight. while musicians play lyres and the breeze teases the veil from your shoulders. You wear seafoam green, or maybe silver, the records argue. But what no one disputes is this: you look like a myth. Antony watches from the shore, armor gleaming, and just for a moment, he grins. The first meeting is theater 2. He tries for formality. You interrupt him with a joke. He responds with a toast. You top it with a proverb. You trade compliments like knives wrapped in velvet. The room fills with laughter, but the air is thick with something sharper. Recognition. Power meeting power. You don't ask about Octavian. He doesn't mention Caesarion. Instead, you speak of ships, routes, loyalty, Rome's hunger for Egypt's wheat, Egypt's need for Rome's respect. But behind every sentence is the unspoken question: can I trust you? You don't answer it. You don't need to. The days blur. Banquets follow meetings. Long walks follow longer debates. He shows you his scars. You show him your maps. He tells you about battles. You tell him about the Nile's moods. Somewhere between strategy and stargazing, something softer takes root. It's not love. Not yet. It's something more dangerous: comfort. You understand each other. He's exhausted by Rome's expectations. You're exhausted by surviving them. He's loud, theatrical, golden with sweat and laughter. You're composed, deliberate, always watching, but willing to laugh, to lean in, to trust, just a little. The alliance becomes personal, then intimate, then irreversible. Back in Alexandria, he follows you like a shadow with sandals. He adapts to your city quickly, drinking in its rhythms, quoting its poets, mocking its courtiers while charming them all the same. The people love him. He gives gold to the temples. He joins in street festivals. He learns just enough Egyptian to ask for honey and insults. He's not Caesar. He doesn't try to be. And that's part of why it works. With Antony, you don't have to strategize every glance. You can relax the arch of your brow, sit barefoot on the palace steps, and laugh until the wine spills. You are still queen. But you are also a woman, and he sees both. You rule together now, uneasily, sometimes, but undeniably. Then, the twins. A boy and a girl. You name them Alexander, Helios, and Cleopatra, Selene, the sun and the moon. The court explodes in celebration. Gifts flood the city. Astrologers declare that the heavens themselves have split open in approval. You appear on temple steps cradling both infants, your smile calm but fierce. Antony holds them with pride and slight confusion. He has many children, but this feels different. These are not heirs to a province. These are symbols. Bridges between empires. Flesh and blood declarations. And, quietly, you hope, legacy. But nothing in Rome stays still. Octavian begins to hiss. He spreads rumors. That Antony is bewitched. That you control him with spells, poisons, pleasures too foreign to name. That he dances in Eastern robes and whispers treason in Greek. That he no longer belongs to Rome. You respond with silence, then with coins bearing your children's faces, then with the donations of Alexandria. In a dramatic ceremony before a roaring crowd, Antony declares your children rulers of eastern provinces: Armenia, Media, Syria. Caesarion is named King of Kings. The audience cheers. Rome howls. The line is drawn. Octavian seizes on the spectacle as proof. Antony has abandoned Rome. He has crowned children. Worse, he has crowned a woman beside them. You, Cleopatra, are no longer a rumor in the forum. You are now Rome's declared enemy. You sit beside Antony that evening, the Nile whispering below. He raises a goblet. You raise your chin. You've made your move, and you both know the final act is coming. Section 15. The sea turns dark with war. It begins not with swords, but with scrolls. Octavian sends messages to the Senate, to Roman generals, to anyone who will listen. Mark Antony is lost. Cleopatra rules him. He has given Roman lands to a foreign queen and her bastard children. The word foreign is repeated like a drumbeat. He doesn't say Egyptian, he says Eastern, which, in Rome, is worse. You and Antony prepare for the inevitable. Your court becomes a camp. The laughter is still there, sometimes, but under it lies steel. The palace is no longer a place of parties and riddles. It is a fortress of strategy. Maps cover the walls. Grain is rationed. Ships are counted, recounted, equipped. You meet with admirals before breakfast, with mathematicians before sleep. That Antony's veterans gather slowly, some out of loyalty, some out of debt, some because they still believe in him. Your generals form ranks, whisper oaths, polish bronze. You still walk barefoot across the scaffolding at the harbor. But now it's to inspect catapults. The armies gather. Octavian moves steadily, methodically. He is no Caesar. He does not inspire awe, but he inspires efficiency and fear. Rome is behind him. Or, more accurately, it's in front of him. Paved like a road, he means to walk straight through you. You and Antony station your fleet at Actium, a choke point in the Ionian Sea, wind-battered and bitter. You choose the location for its strategic advantage. You also know it will trap you. And still, you go, because there is no turning back. The battle comes. The details are muddy, even now. Fires. Betrayals. Ships drifting out of formation. Agrippa, Octavian's admiral, pressing every advantage like a man with nothing to lose. From the deck of your command ship, you watch it unfold. The sails stiffen with smoke. The sky bruises with flame. Roman ships, ones you thought were yours, peel away. Some join the enemy. Others drift without command, or stilled in confusion. You count the signals. 1, 2, 3, none of them good. You look at Antony's ship that he's staring at you. There is a pause, brief and sickening, and then you both turn. Retreat. They call it a betrayal. They say you fled too soon. That Antony followed you like a lovesick boy, abandoning his men to die in the surf. That it's not true, but it's simple. And simple stories are easier to believe when people need someone to blame. Back in Alexandria, you limp. Not your body, your presence. The city still shines, but the corners feel dimmer. The court is quieter. The feasts are fewer. You host poetry readings still, but no one laughs as loud. Caesarion grows solemn. Your twins do not understand the change, but they sense it. The palace echoes. The Nile feels more like a question than a god. Antony drifts. He drinks more now. Not all the time, but enough that you notice. His jokes slur. His armor gathers dust. You offer him advice. He shrugs. You try to plan. He tells stories from battles long past, as if trying to outshout the future. You still love him, but it's not the same love as before. It's a love with bandages on it. Then the final message arrives. Octavian is coming. Not a rumor this time. Not whispers from Sicilian harbors or Egyptian scouts. He's here. His fleet darkens the sea like a bruise spreading toward shore. His soldiers march in silence, disciplined, sunburnt, relentless. That he doesn't want surrender, he wants displayed. He wants to drag you and Antony behind his chariot. He wants to parade Caesarion in chains. He wants to make an example. You do not give him the chance. Antony dies first. You've heard the story before, but this time, you live it. The false report. The sword. The bleeding on the marble couch. He is broken, but he finds your eyes. You cradle him, and he dies with your name in his mouth. The palace is so quiet afterward. You can hear the Nile lap the shore like breathing. You know what comes next, but you don't rush. There are still scrolls to burn, letters to seal, final instructions to whisper to those who might outlive the empire. You send Caesarion away, east, maybe, or south, it's not clear. You don't expect him to survive, but you have to try. You walk through your garden one last time. You leave milk for the cats. You kiss your children while they sleep. You sit before a mirror and fix your hair. And then, history fades to myth. Section 16. The room is cool, stone walls. A high, latticed window that lets in just enough breeze to stir the incense. Outside, Alexandria buzzes, its final, uncertain days playing out in the streets. Merchants lowering their voices, soldiers checking their weapons, children pretending they don't notice the way their parents are whispering. Inside, it is just you. You've bathed. Dressed. Not in morning black, but in white linen, soft and clean. Your jewelry is minimal, a simple torque, a narrow circlet, no excessive gold. Your hair is braided tightly, coiled like a crown. This is not an ending, you tell yourself. It's a curation. You sit cross-legged on the couch, ankles tucked beneath you. There are no guards, no attendants. Just two women, your most trusted, quiet and steady as marble. One holds a sealed basket. The other watches the door. The third, the snake, perhaps, sleeps inside woven reeds, silent as a secret. The method doesn't matter. Not really. Later, poets will argue over it. Historians too. Did you use a serpent? A poison? A pin hidden in a hairpiece? Did you die quickly or slowly? Did you cry out or whisper a final word? You could tell them, but you won't. A queen is never more powerful than in what she withholds. You write one last letter, not to your children. You've already left them everything you can in the form of people, promises, and blurred plans. This letter is for Octavian. You keep it short. A line of gratitude for his courtesy. A request for your body to be buried beside Antony's. No accusations. No poetry. You know how men like him think, clean and strategic. You give him nothing to twist. You do not sign it with love. You sign it with sovereignty. Then, the final preparations. The doors are closed. The light dims. And at the very edge of your vision, the ASP, if it is an ASP, shifts. It's smaller than you imagined. Its tongue flickers once. You do not flinch. Your breathing slows. Your thoughts rise, strangely detached. You think of perfume. Of Caesarion's first laugh. Of the Nile glittering under stars. Of the scroll you read as a girl about a queen who defied a god and won. And then you think nothing at all. When they find you, hours later, your body is untouched. Peaceful. Composed. Antony's sword lies across your lap like a storybook ending. Octavian arrives soon after. He stares. For a long time. You're told he doesn't gloat. He doesn't curse your name. He doesn't even smile. Just stands there, brow furrowed, as if measuring the shape of a loss he didn't quite expect. Then, at your final request, he agrees. You are buried with Antony. Side by side. The past, wrapped in silk and dust. The story, closed. But not really. Because this isn't Rome. This is Egypt. And in Egypt, nothing ends. Not truly. Here, the dead live on painted on tomb walls, inscribed on gold, remembered in rituals that outlive kingdoms. You are not erased. You are layered. A goddess. A ruler. A mother. A ghost. The people still leave offerings near the temple ruins, figs, dates, coins. They don't know why. Only that they must. Only that your name still means something. Cleopatra, whispered in markets, carved into dreams, alive in the silence after thunder. You don't need a tomb to be remembered. You built something larger than stone. A legend no chisel can contain. Section 17. Centuries pass. Sand covers roads. Statues fall. The marble floors where you once walked barefoot crack beneath other empires, other names. Alexandria changes hands more times than anyone bothers to count. Persians, Byzantines, Arabs, Turks, French, British. Each leaves a layer. Each forgets something, but not you. Never entirely. You were too useful for forgetting. The Renaissance rediscovers your name first, not as a ruler, but as a cautionary tale wrapped in velvet and myth. Painters in Florence and Rome imagine you sprawled in ecstasy, pearls slipping from your fingers, poison on your lips. You are not a woman. You are an idea, temptation, power, downfall. The men who paint you do not know your story. They do not care. But your eyes on their canvases are steady, unapologetic. Somewhere beneath the layers of oil and allegory, you're still watching. Then come the Enlightenment scholars. They debate your languages 9 or 7. Your ancestry, was she more Greek than Egyptian? Your intentions, was she a patriot or a manipulator? None of them ask what it meant to wake before sunrise, barefoot, sorting tax ledgers while courtiers slept. None of them wonder what it cost to smile at senators who wanted you dead. They dissect you like a myth with footnotes. You become a puzzle made of missing pieces, and still, you shine. In the 19th century, Europe plunders Egypt with velvet gloves and greedy pockets. They dynamite tombs, smuggle obelisks, Ship sarcophagi to smoky museums. Napoleon brings scientists in powdered wigs and soldiers in blue coats. The British follow with mustaches and monologues. Everyone wants to own the past, as if conquest can be retroactive. They look for you. They never find you, but your story fuels their fantasies. Opera houses stage your death with orchestras. Parlors debate your love life in French. Queen Victoria has your bust in her private study. You're the queen every empire wishes it could tame. Then, Hollywood, the camera loves you. Too much. They wrap you in sequins. Give you violet eyes. Replace your barge with sets so heavy they sink studios. You stride across cinemas worldwide with flawless eyeliner and impossible costumes. You are Elizabeth Taylor now. Not a queen, but a spectacle. Not a strategist, but a siren. But audiences cheer. The myth sells. And a new generation learns your name, not from scrolls or temples, but from celluloid flicker and technicolor flame. It is not accurate, but it keeps you alive. And in between all this, quietly, steadily, women read about you. Not the version with snake bites and coal, the version who ruled. They study the real Cleopatra, polyglot, economist, naval planner, diplomat, survivor. In classrooms, they argue for your complexity. In essays, they reclaim your ambition. They name their daughters after you, not because of your beauty, but because you endured. And you did. You always did. Through papyrus, parchment, paint, press, through betrayal, exile, reinvention. You never stopped being relevant. Because you were never just a story. You were a system. A force. A woman in full. Section 18. The archaeologists come with maps and hope. They bring satellite images, sonar scans, mud-caked boots, and whispered dreams of discovery. They comb the shores of Abu Qir Bay, where Alexandria once spilled into the sea like a city daring to kiss the horizon. They are not treasure hunters. Not exactly. They want to find you. Not just your tomb. Your silence. Your final answer to history's noise. The dig sites are meticulous. They uncover coins stamped with your profile. Nose sharp, chin firm, gaze tilted slightly left. They find temple fragments, wine jugs, an earring half buried beside what might have once been a priest's quarters. Every shard is catalogued, bagged, studied under plastic tents that flap like sails in the coastal wind. Sometimes, they think they're closed at a chamber near Taposiris Magna. A wall beneath Com El Dika. A vault flooded decades ago, but still humming with mystery. They find other tombs, courtiers, soldiers, scribes, but never yours. Still, they keep digging. Because it's not just about bones or gold, that it's about meeting a woman who shaped history without asking permission. They debate the symbolism of your burial. Was it intentional? This disappearance, did you want to be found? Or did you orchestrate your vanishing as carefully as your life? Final performance, final curtain, and afterlife unscripted. They ask, why here? Why Alexandria? Why not somewhere hidden, protected? But you know why. Because Alexandria was never just your capital. It was your canvas, your sanctuary, your stage, and your shadow still lingers in its cracks. Modern Alexandria is different. No barge-lined harbors. No perfumed processions. The lighthouse is gone, toppled by earthquakes and time. The library has been reborn in glass and steel, more monument than archive. But the city still sings that in a different key. Children laugh in alleyways where philosophers once debated. Cats laze on sun-drenched ruins like they own the past. They do. And every so often, a guide pauses near a broken pillar, gestures at a scrap of carved lotus, and says, here. This might have been hers. Even the certainty isn't certain anymore. But the feeling is. Some say you live in every woman who resists being simplified, in every ruler underestimated, every girl told to stay quiet, every strategist in a silk scarf who draws battle lines in dinner parties and business meetings and side glances. They write songs about your mystery. They paint murals of your strength. They hashtag your name beside phrases like icon and queen behavior, half mocking, half sincere. You've become digital. shareable, streamed. But beneath it all, you remain what you always were, undeniable. You left no grand farewell to no final decree carved in stone. Just this, a legacy too large for any one version to contain the world keeps trying, and failing, and trying again. Each attempt says more about the living than about you, but maybe that's the point. You were not meant to be explained. You were meant to be experienced. Section 19. The tomb they almost found. It begins with a rumor that a fisherman's tale told in the hush between tides. He says he saw something, just a glimpse, beneath the shallow waters near Taposiris Magna. Something shaped like a doorway, or maybe a jaw. The currents shift. The sand settles. The past stirs. The archaeologists return, not with shovels this time, but divers. Cameras. Permits signed in triplicate. They're cautious now. Too many false starts. Too many headlines that promised Cleopatra's tomb found, followed by silence. Still, hope is a powerful thing. Even when it's heavy with silt, they lower drones into underwater caves. The footage is murky, grainy, but it shows something. A corridor, carved. A chamber, maybe. Columns flanking an entrance where fish thread through forgotten doorways. One researcher gasps. Another says, it's probably Roman. Another says, but what if? They send divers next. You remember the divers. You remember being submerged. Once for ritual, once for hiding. Now again, for memory. The divers brush away centuries of salt and stone. They find nothing at first. Then a fragment. A gold scarab, no bigger than a fingernail. Then another. An alabaster jar, sealed. Intact. Then, the edge of a mosaic, just barely visible beneath the sand. That it's not much. But it's enough. Enough for a new round of theories, articles, speculation. Enough for the tabloids to wake up and shout, Cleopatra's secret vault? The site is closed off. Excavation begins in earnest. That you're patient that you've waited this long. The lead archaeologist is a woman. She wears sunblock and linen and a hat too wide for doorways. She's tired, brilliant, meticulous. Her name is Layla. She doesn't say much, but when she kneels in the dirt beside what might be a carved antechamber, her breath catches. You watch her the way you once watched Octavian. Cautiously, curiously. She brushes back sand like it's lace. The chamber opens beneath her hands. Inside, emptiness, but a shaped emptiness, not random, not looted, not abandoned. Prepared. A dais. A wall painted with a faded ink. A basin that smells faintly, of lotus oil and something spiced. Cinnamon? Myrrh? There is no body to no coffin. Just space, intention, suggestion. The press calls it a disappointment. Layla does not. She calls it the echo of someone who knew how to leave. Historians descend like gulls. They argue, naturally. Too plain to be hers. Too symbolic not to be. Why no inscriptions? Why not? They ask questions you knew they'd ask. What kind of queen erases her own ending? But you know the answer. The kind who understood that the story matters more than the stone. And so you left the story. Not finished. Ongoing. Even now, tourists peer at glass cases and velvet ropes and ask if your tomb has ever been found. The guides smile and say, not yet. And somewhere beneath sand and sea and history's long shadow, your voice, silent, sly, amused, whispers. Maybe that's the point. Section 20. The girl with the Cleopatra book. She is 10, maybe 11. Curly hair tied back with a pencil. Sweater sleeves pushed up to her elbows. A backpack too big for her back and shoes scuffed from climbing places she probably wasn't supposed to. She finds you on a library shelf between Greek mythology and world leaders. The cover is shiny. Your name is gold. The image? Inaccurate. That you're wearing something vaguely Egyptian and completely made up. But she doesn't care, because the name Cleopatra feels like a secret code, like a password into a bigger world. She checks the book out, carries it home like it's sacred, reads it under the covers with a flashlight when she's supposed to be asleep, She learns about the languages first, how many you spoke, how young you were when you began to rule, how the coins bore your face, not soft and sweet, but strong, practical, regal. She wonders how that felt to wake up one day and know your name will echo across continents. She doesn't understand all of it, the alliances, the wars, the betrayals, but she gets the loneliness and the planning and the pretending not to be scared. She keeps reading. Later, in school, they'll teach her the shorter version, the simple one, the tragic one, the one where you're just a lover and a legend and a lesson. That she'll raise her hand and say, actually, she was also a naval commander. The teacher will blink, someone will giggle, but she won't back down. You gave her that. Not the power, but the permission. She grows up, she reads more, finds books without snakes and scandals, watches documentaries, writes essays with titles like Reconsidering Cleopatra, Hellenistic Sovereignty, and Gendered Historiography. She teaches, or maybe leads, or maybe builds something the world thought a girl couldn't. And one day, someone asks her, why Cleopatra? She shrugs and smiles and says, because she wasn't supposed to survive. But she did. Your myth is many things, but to her, you were a mirror, not of what she was, of what she could become. Section 21. The queen in the mirror that you're in a museum, or maybe a bathroom, or the polished black screen of a sleeping phone. Anywhere there's glass, there's a chance someone sees you. Not literally, not exactly, but something about the angle of their chin, the line of their eyeliner, the quiet firmness with which they correct a mistake. That's you, that you've become a gesture, a way of holding oneself, a reminder that presence, true presence, isn't about noise, that it's about certainty, that it's about the way you once entered a room, not with trumpets, but with timing, not with power, but with precision. People still talk about the barge, silken sails, perfumed oars, theatrics on water, but they forget the point that it wasn't for show, that it was for strategy. You didn't sail to seduce, you sailed to set terms. That difference, so small, so vast, echoes now that in courtrooms, in kitchens, in board meetings, in whispered conversations on staircases at weddings, women invoking you, whether they know it or not. You are the inner monologue before a risk. You are the pause before a yes. You are the voice that says, you've prepared. Now enter. Not everyone sees you. Some only see the costume, the snake, the spectacle, the scandal, but some, just enough, see the queen. They recognize the calculus behind your smile, the balance behind your charm, the necessity of surviving in a world designed to misunderstand you. You are not their idol. You are their co-conspirator, and so, generation by generation, something of you survives, not just in ruins or reels, but in the soft, steady unfolding of lives lived deliberately. You are not reincarnated. You are remembered, and that, too, is power. Section 22. The death that never quite landed. They still argue about how it happened. The ASP, of course. Everyone loves the ASP. Theatrical, symbolic, compact. But even that version isn't simple. Was it hidden in a fig basket? Did it strike her arm, or breast, or thigh? Could a snake even kill that quickly? Historians take sides. Some say poison was more likely. Carefully brewed, tucked into a pin or a comb, or a vial sewn into her gown. Others argue for suicide by concoction, a choice that left nothing to chance. Then come the skeptics. Maybe it was murder. Maybe Octavian couldn't risk leaving her alive. The truth, you would have known what they'd say, what they'd need from your ending. Something dramatic, tragic, preferably beautiful. But real death is rarely photogenic. It is quiet, unforgiving, and profoundly ordinary. You didn't get to choose what would be remembered, just what you left behind. They say your body was found curled beside your maid's. They say you wore robes of state. They say you looked peaceful. They say many things, but no one can prove where you went. And that absence, it became your final, brilliant play, because without a grave, there is no closure. Without closure, there is no consensus. And without consensus, there is room to shift, to stretch, to become. You were never a single thing. Not even in death. Not martyr, not monster, not myth. You were a woman who played her final move in silence. And the silence echoes through centuries, through libraries, through the minds of those who still try to stitch your ending into something neat, but your story frays on purpose. The thread pulls, the hem unravels, because you never belonged to one version. You were and are more, and death, yours, ours, is not the end, that it's the mystery we leave behind. Section 23. The copies and the counterfeits. They made statues of you, of course. Most were flattering. Some were strange. Greek style. Nose straight, chin thoughtful, hair coiled in modest buns. Egyptian style. Stiff shoulders, cobra crown, arms close to the body like you're bracing for something. Roman style. Sharp, politic, a little too clean, but none of them quite get you. Not the way you actually stood. Weight on your back leg. One foot turned slightly out, ready to pivot. Still, they tried, and they kept trying. You are on coins. You are on cameos. You are in stained glass and silver spoons, and, bafflingly, on a perfume bottle shaped like a pyramid. Everyone wants a piece of you, even when they don't know what they're holding. Some collectors claim their bust is the original. Their mosaic shows your true eyes. Their papyrus, faded and fraying, is from your very own desk. Some even claim to channel you. Psychics. Mediums. Theater students with excellent eyeliner. You sit politely through all of it. You've seen worse. For centuries, everyone has wanted to possess you. Emperors wanted your loyalty. Writers wanted your downfall. Filmmakers wanted your silhouette. Feminists wanted your strength. And somewhere, somehow, every generation thinks they're the first to discover you. You smile. Let them try, because the copies may multiply. The fakes may outnumber the facts, but you remain underneath it all, steady, unsimplified. You are not the bust in the hallway, not the painting above the fireplace, not the cliché in the costume shop. You are the question they didn't ask, the footnote they ignored, the strategy behind the smile. Every imitation sharpens your outline. Every distortion makes your truth harder, brighter, more necessary. And when someone finally asks, "But who was she really?" you step forward, as always, not to answer, to invite them to look again. Section 24. The last scholar, and the whisper of salt. She's older now. The scholar. The one who wrote her thesis on your letters, who taught your life in sunlit classrooms, who corrected footnotes with red ink and a tired smile. Her hair is silver. Her hands tremble slightly. But her mind, sharp as a minted coin, she still teaches. Not every day, but sometimes she guest lectures, and sometimes she's asked to appear in documentaries, and once, just once, she said no to a best-selling author who wanted to turn you into a steamy desert romance. She never stopped wondering where you were buried, how you sounded when you laughed, whether you had time to grieve, to breathe, to rest. Tonight, she walks the shore near Alexandria. The air is thick with salt and memory. The sea is quieter than usual. She listens. She's never been one to talk to the dead, but tonight, she speaks aloud. I hope you knew what you did mattered. And just for a moment, maybe it's the tide, maybe it's the wind. There's something in the air, a shift, a softness, a knowing. She doesn't tell anyone. She doesn't need to. In her office, there's a shelf, second row from the bottom. One book. Tattered spine. Inside, a note written in her own hand years ago. Still watching. Still learning. Still sovereign. She never published that chapter. It didn't fit the thesis. It wasn't academic enough. But it was true. That night, she dreams of papyrus rustling in the breeze, of oars dipping in gold-flecked water, of a voice, wry, weary, amused, saying, "They never did get the eyeliner right." And she laughs in her sleep, because she's tired, because it's funny, because she finally feels like she said goodbye, but not to you. To the chase. You were never lost. You were waiting, and someone finally listened long enough to hear you breathe. Section 25. The Queen Beneath the Noise. The world keeps spinning. Alexandria buzzes with cars now. Horns and heat and satellite dishes bloom from rooftops like steel flowers. And no parades, no incense, no guards lining marble halls. And yet, you're still here. Not just in textbooks or TikToks or tired headlines, but in the way a girl walks into a room and doesn't apologize, that in the way a decision is made quietly, firmly, with no need for spectacle. You have become less a figure, more a frequency, and some people can still tune in. There's a singer in Cairo who names her song after you, Malikat Al-Zaman. That there's a poet in Montreal who ends each stanza with your name, as though it's a compass. There's a teenager in Manila who paints your portrait in green and gold, placing you not in Egypt, but in space. They don't owe you accuracy. They owe you nothing at all, but they feel you, and that's enough. Because legacies aren't just about monuments, they're about resonance. You knew that. That's why you live the way you did. Every choice, every alliance, every pivot, layered not just for survival, but for memory. You weren't trying to be eternal. You were trying to be understood. It didn't happen in your lifetime. It didn't happen for centuries. But it's happening now. Slowly, unevenly, and yes, imperfectly. People still mispronounce your name, still reduce you to beauty or scandal or tragedy. But more often now, they pause, they look closer, and sometimes they realize what was always true. You were never a story someone else wrote. You were the author, the architect, the ink. Not just the queen of the Nile, but the queen of nuance, of staying, of shaping, of surviving. And when the noise fades, scrolls, statues, scripts, what's left is you, the woman behind the myth, still sovereign, still watching, still whole. And now, the sea is quiet again, the sand has settled. The air cools against the skin of memory, soft as silk unspooled from time, that you're no longer walking marble halls or sailing perfumed barges, that you're floating gently between centuries and sighs. Let the sounds around you dim now, the flicker of city lights beyond the window, the whisper of distant traffic, even the hum of your own thoughts, slowly untangling. Breathe in. Let Cleopatra fade not into absence, but into presence, and no longer a puzzle or performance, but a calm, steady breath across history's surface. You saw her not as legend tonight, but as woman. A planner, a mother, a survivor, someone who rose early and worked late, who charmed, not for show, but for safety, who ruled not by accident, but with grit. And now, she rests. And so should you. Close your eyes, if you haven't already. Let your muscles loosen, your jaw soften. Let that last image linger. The ripple of oars in a golden bay. A voice, confident and quiet, saying, "You are still here." And so you are. Good night, my friend. Sweet dreams.